and it talks about workplace inclusion, LGBTQ workplace inclusion. And we at FICCI and FICCI D&I Task Force are very thankful to him to do this virtual book reading for all our members. Thank you so much, Parmesh. And so, of course, other than the virtual book reading, we also have a very interesting panel lined up today. So thank you, Keshav ji, and thank you, Radhika, so much, our co-chairs of the FICCI D&I Task Force who are here with us. And we also have Ms. Arundhati Kajju, who's a lawyer at the Supreme Court and would talk about the LGBTQ inclusion, and also Ms. Prachi Rastogi from IBM joining us. So there's an interesting panel, and we're also marking, of course, the 2 years of the Article 377 and what has happened so far. So some very interesting discussion lined up, and I don't want to take away anybody's time at all. So I'm going to now request Keshav ji to do his welcome and start the session, please.
Thank you so much, Uma ji. Hi everyone. Namaskar. It's really an interesting time that we're living in right now, and it's at the same time there's so much that is happening around us and around the world, and whilst we are not being able to really be physically with each other, I've probably seen the most of Parmesh through the virtual platform, or spoken at almost every sort of platform with Zainab, who unfortunately could not be with us today. And I just feel that my closeness with my LGBTQ family through virtual platform has actually grown. And there was something strange that was happening to me whilst I was in the lockdown. I was somehow getting so used to this new normal that I was completely forgetting what the world was pre-lockdown. And lo and behold, Queeristan came out, and I got this copy from Parmesh, and I suddenly remembered, all that he has documented in the book. Be it related to what happened with the Lalit, or be it related to the fight before the petition that I filed for with the fantastic Arundhati who's here, and the fight for LGBTQ inclusion, before these 10 years and during these 10 years, and then especially since the reading down of 377, that I suddenly started remembering that, wow, all of us put together have achieved quite a bit. I mean, everything has moved so fast, especially in the last 2 years, and especially on platforms and industry bodies like FICCI, who have really championed this cause. We launched the task force of DNI last year in December, as Radhika and me as co-chairs, and we have, of course, Arundhati and Prachi and Parmesh, who are part of the task force. But where you would think that a lot of conversations on inclusion and diversity have been put on hold because the world's gone on hold since the lockdown, I feel that FICCI has gone on overdrive. And with all that we have done together, be it the representations that we have sent to various bodies, or be it the DEI certification program that we're doing now, or the index launch, I think that that in itself is really a sign of an array of hope in these very, very dark times. And I'm not going to take too much more of your time, because I can't speak on the behalf of these fabulous people that are going to speak later. But all I can say is that I'm exceedingly grateful to each and every one of you, especially after reading the book, to just remember, how we got here and why we're here together. And it's, I think, each of you have a hand to play in that. And of course, our fabulous narrator, which is Parmesh. So I'm going to hand it over to Parmesh to do a little bit of the book reading, and then if there are any questions, ask away.
Thank you, Keshav. And it's really a pleasure. I'm very happy to do this. A big thank you to Uma, Bavleen, my entire FICCI family. All of you, we are family. We should have some music in the background. Maybe we should make a FICCI anthem, just, saying we are family with FICCI family. next webinar as people attend. All of you attending, thank you so much. Arundhati, Prachi, Keshav, Radhika, just so happy to be sharing this, the next hour with you. So for everyone attending, I thought we will break the next about 45 minutes or so into 3 parts. In the first part, I'll give you a very quick overview for the 5% of you that haven't read the book so far. For everyone else, just think it's revision. I especially want to read out the part of the book where FICCI comes in, because I think it's really, really vital that FICCI was the first big industry body to actually go all out and embrace LGBTQ inclusion. And of course, others have followed off late. I mean, I was doing something with CII, AIMA and all recently, but FICCI, you were the OG. I want to read out that bit. Then I'm going to pose a simple question to each of our panelists on what each panelist feels has succeeded so far, 2 years after the verdict, and what needs to be done as well. The aim is to convert all the good intentions that we've had, in the past few years into action. And I want everyone who's attending this to actually go home with some homework that they can do right now. So I'm urging all our panelists to give all of us, inspire us, but also give us we have the time, give us homework that we can do right now to start making our worlds more inclusive from right now, because we've waited for far too long. Yeah. And then we'll open it up to audience questions. Of course, audience, please use the chat box right away to start typing in your questions. And if, Uma, Bavleen, if you can just keep a look at them, and, if there's any interesting ones, pop them back in the chat box later. So have lots of fun. Really looking forward. Let me give you a quick overview of the book. The book has 5 sections. It starts with my own personal journey and Godrej journey. And I kind of make people enter the book right with a big bang. People enter the book with me looking at Hema Malini coming down a big balloon, dancing to Mere Naseeb Mein. And the book just read very atypical for a business book, right? You're right in the middle of the action and you're in the middle of my world. And it's Hema Malini meets Homi Bhabha and everything in between, because that's my world. That's the kind of life I live. And I talk about my own journey growing up. I talk about the kind of work that's happening right now at Godrej that one has been doing for the past 10 years. And I do that not out of any indulgence, but with very specific reason. And it's linked to the reasons that Menika Arundhati and so many of these other lawyers gave in the 2018 arguments, right? That we need to tell stories about queer people, because as long as people think of queer people as an abstraction, they won't get us. So I start the book with my own story, and throughout the book, you meet so many other queer people, because even before you reach the business parts of the book, which is why LGBTQ inclusion is important and what you can do, I want you as a reader, I want everyone reading to kind of be engrossed in our stories, our worlds, and kind of be with us, right? So then you are going with the protagonist on this journey instead of reading about the protagonist, right? So the first bit is deeply personal. Then I give everyone a background of the law, of all the various terms that we call ourselves in the LGBTQ community, a history, but told through different ways, not just through books, but also through oral histories and other ways, and also the importance of family. And, I started by saying, this is my FICCI family with great intent, right? Because we are in India. Our blood families and the families we create around us really, really matter. So I use this word with great intent and with great love. Our workplaces are also our families. How can we take the same love and affection of our home families and extend it towards our workplace families is essentially what Queeristan is about, right? So then we go into the businessy part of the book, which is also fun because it's got stories, it's got incredible characters in it who are real life people who happen to be friends and people I admire. So if you weren't present at Keshav's wedding, very few people were, or Radhika's wedding, where even fewer people were, you can read about these in the book. You can have a bird's eye view. Unlike Priyanka, Nick, and all those other celeb weddings, these were very exclusive. So you either had a ringside seat or not. And if you didn't, you can read about it in the book. And you get to meet so many incredible characters like Kusuma, who's now working at Intuit, who's lesbian, who came out to a mother, and now Kusuma, her partner, and her mother get together every Sunday and cook and watch TV together, right? Creating their own sense of family. So you get to meet all these incredible people in all these different parts of the book. And I end the book on a deeply optimistic note where I outline this ideal world coming up all around us. I call it Queeristan with love and affection. And I say that it's not an imaginary world. It's a world that we are already creating. And I list so many different positive changes taking place, whether in films, books, politics, so many different states being affirmative, the law making progress, schools and colleges, families, all the incredible young intersectional queer movements taking place, whether it's Dalit queer, whether it's queer Muslim, whether it's Shikhi homo, whether it's organizations like Pink List and so on. There's so many incredible organizations coming up across India, online, offline, in small towns, in big cities, and say that we need to examine all this positive change around us and co-create better workplaces for sure, but also a much, much, much better society. So it's naam ke vaste, upar se a business book, but actually it's a personal diary. It's got love letters, it's got TikTok, it's got parties, it's got job fairs. It's a full-on Bollywood masala movie, and you get it. Now the multiplex tickets are also up. For a decent seat in a multiplex is 900 rupees, but you get this for like 699 only. So it's very paisa vasool. And with that, there's no such thing as too much selling, no. I want to take you through some key arguments, I think, which are very, very important, which I make in the book. The first is that inclusion makes sense whichever way you look at it. Money, innovation, talent, whichever way. And there's a whole bunch of numbers and there's a whole bunch of stories, right? The second is that being LGBTQ inclusive is very much part of an Indian culture, of our Indian culture. And I think this is important, right? Because we are FICCI. I in that is Indian, Federation of Indian. So what is a good way of being a good FICCI and what is a good way of being a good FICCI member? It's by recognizing that inclusion is a very Indian thing to do. So to be a good Indian company means to be inclusive. Then I've spoken about family earlier as how it's a key axis and how we can reimagine the idea of family to be workplace family as well. And finally, I say that, if you're queer, I want this book to kind of make you feel good and positive and confident. And if you are an ally, you need to stand up and speak up for us because we can't do this alone as queer people. You need to be in fighting alongside us to create this more equal India. And recognize that when you are struggling for LGBTQ rights, our rights are connected with so many other social justice movements that are taking place all over in India and world. They're connected with the anti-caste movement. They're connected with Black Lives Matter in different parts of the world. They're connected with student rights. They're connected with feminism. They're connected with people who want a better planet, Greta Thunberg and so many others, young champions across the world, right? So I just hope that people use this book to build bridges of solidarity and love. I'm going to give you a small excerpt about FICCI, and then we will go into our discussion part of it. So this is a chapter in which I urge companies that are participating to become an advocate for LGBTQ issues outside the company. So here it goes. In November 2019, I was proud to be a part of the launch of a landmark report at the FICCI headquarters in Delhi. The report, New Global Champions, Why Fast-Growing Companies from Emerging Markets Are Embracing LGBT+ Inclusion by Open for Business, catalogs the LGBTQ inclusion strategies of companies in countries like India and makes a clear connection between LGBTQ inclusion, growth, and brand favorability. It was a rare, sunny, smog-free day in the capital. Drew Keller, the global program director of Open for Business, had come in from New York. Elliot Vaughan, the managing director of Boston Consulting Group, who had funded and supported the report, had flown in from London just for this evening to be alongside Seema Bansal from their Indian office. Melissa Ferrier, the global LGBTQ leader from Wipro, had come up from Bengaluru. In the audience were representatives of other companies, journalists, and heads of different LGBTQ organizations. This was a historic day, as it was the first time that the FICCI headquarters was hosting something queer. I was deeply moved by the remarks that Dilip Chenoy, the FICCI Secretary General, made on stage. he shared that when FICCI started their LGBTQ inclusion efforts in 2018, many of the member companies asked him why he was doing this. They even wondered if he was gay. For everyone watching, I think Dilip is straight. But he continued to be doing this and is a tireless advocate, and the FICCI member companies finally started coming around. The Supreme Court's 2018 verdict was a tremendous catalyzing force. This is the power of coalition building and collective advocacy. If you care about inclusion, reach out to FICCI and help amplify the excellent work. If you are part of any other organization, then push your institution to constantly put LGBTQ inclusion on their agenda. If you are part of senior management in a company, you have the power and the financial and cultural capital that can really shift gears of inclusion in the country. And like Dilip, who is doing cultural acupuncture using his position at FICCI, do something about it whenever and however you can. So I'm going to stop right here and thank FICCI once again. And, just open it up to a panel discussion with our incredible panelists. So it's 4 of you. I wonder if each of you can, share your thoughts for about 3 or 4 minutes about this question, right? Arundhati, if I can ask with you, if I can start with you, what do you think has succeeded so far? And what is one action point that you think needs to be done further at this juncture, 2 years after the 377 verdict? So Arundhati, all yours. You're mute, yeah.
Yeah, okay, thank you. So firstly, congratulations on a really exciting book. I loved it. And I think the thing is that when it comes to change and how we see it and how we record it, it's really important to have the written word with us to document this journey as we're on it, right? So Parmesh, congratulations, and FICCI, thank you for hosting this event. If I look at the last 2.5 years now since the 2018 judgment, I think the biggest change that I see is the confidence that LGBT people have to stand up for their rights and to make change. So whether it's in institutions like FICCI, whether it's in their own workplaces, whether it's young couples who call Menaka and myself because they are looking for police protection, which I think was unimaginable before 2018. Now they can imagine going to court and asking those same courts that the police protect them. And we've seen judgments from Uttarakhand, from Punjab, from Kerala, Delhi, Bombay, all across the country where courts are stepping up to make that happen. So really, it's about very tangible change in people's lives. I think, one thing that is always on my radar and that is really important to me personally is what kind of benefits are LGBT people and same-sex couples given within organizations. What I'm hoping for in the future is that more organizations sign up to give especially health insurance benefits to same-sex couples. This is a time when not only are we in the middle of a pandemic, India is soon going to become or has become the country with the leading number of cases and number of deaths. We need to have health insurance, and not just through companies, but also insurance companies need to make sure that couples who approach them can get insurance at par with opposite sex couples who are married. As long as LGBT Indians don't have the option of getting married, we should not be excluded from something as basic as health insurance in the middle of a pandemic. And there are 2 aspects to this pandemic. One is, of course, the health aspect with COVID and all the related health issues that arise and the long-term health issues that arise with COVID that perhaps we're not fully aware of. But the other aspect is also the mental health pandemic that's accompanying it. And we know that LGBTQ people are particularly susceptible to mental health issues because of all the all the burdens that they carry through this journey. We know that there are rates of depression, mental health issues, and suicide in the community. So this is really a time when companies need to step up for their employees. And secondly, I would say especially insurance companies need to change their policies. Same-sex couples need to be able to get health insurance as couples, as family insurance, even when they are not married. I mean, marriage cannot be the test right now in the middle of a pandemic.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Radhika, do you want to go next?
Yeah, sure. I'll just pick up where Arundhati left off. I'm going to go straight into the issue and then I'll sort of come back to what I liked about Queeristan later. So what is happening is right now we have a pandemic. And what happens is in any society, when an emergency hits or problems hit, the people who are weak or vulnerable are disproportionately affected. And although this specific topic is about LGBT inclusion, because it's a FICCI group, I'm going to say it's also for people with disabilities and also women in the workforce. While women are not a minority in the population, women in the formal workforce are very much a minority. So when something like COVID happens, for different reasons, whether you're part of the LGBT movement, whether you're a person with disabilities, or whether you are a woman who is struggling with home care, childcare, and maybe looking after aging parents, in-laws, and then having pressure to go back to office, like the pandemic, all these are problems. Now, how does Queeristan help address these problems? It is a question of basically demonstrating impatience with the norm and saying now, 2 years ago, the law changed. Now it is time to change what we consider normal in society. So it is all about being more vocal and getting more and more straight allies, especially straight Indian men who are in charge, in control of the boardroom, in control of the insurance companies who make policies, really asking them with love and respect that we want a seat at the table. We want you to hear what we have to say. And that is what the book is asking. And that is what the FICCI Task Force on Diversity and Inclusion is also asking. So that is what we are, and there has been great progress in the last 2 years. I will say that the fantastic work that Arundhati and team did on the Supreme Court judgment, the amazing work that Parmesh has done throughout the last decade in just, bringing this topic up to places where it used to be uncomfortable, but is no more uncomfortable. That is the journey we've done, right? Mr. Dilip Chinoy did make the statements and stood by what he did because we were able to convince him. And like so, we have to keep going. So we have made some good progress in the last 2 years, and FICCI is an amazing flag bearer on this. But we have to keep pushing it. So what I would ask anyone who's listening in this call today, and especially if you are not part of the LGBT community, if you are an ally, you've taken the time to dial in to hear about this, I'll request you to please do things. Go back to your aging parents and say, hey, I listened to this interesting webinar today, and those people are not different from me. They care about the same things, and we should value and request them, treat them equally. And I want you to go back to your HR manager and say the same thing and say, hey, what is my company doing to make sure that the LGBT community and also women and also people with disabilities, how are they being treated fairly and equally within our organization? So same question you can ask your parents and grandparents on the family, like what are we doing to make sure everyone is treated respectfully, equally and fairly? And same question you ask your HR manager or your boss. These are the two things I request you to please do. It has been an amazing journey so far. Parmesh and Arundhati and Keshav have done so much through all their individual and professional efforts to take it forward. Now we have to widen the net. So if there are 50 or 60 or 100 people in this call, please use your own sphere of influence, and you have one. The fact that you are in this call means somewhere you have an interest, you have a passion, maybe you are professionally engaged, personally engaged. Use that circle to make the circles bigger, and that way we can change all of society. Thank you. Back to you, Parmesh.
Thanks, Radhika. And speaking of widening the net, Prachi, we haven't been with you before on any Zoom call before. So to widen the net of inclusion and bring you in,
Absolutely.
over to you.
Yes, once again, congratulations for the book. And maybe you and I haven't really shared space on Zoom before or on a WebEx, but I know you really well. I've heard you, I've seen your notes, and have worked very closely with Keshav and of course Uma and Bhavleen. So thank you, FICCI, for organizing this today. And I loved how Arundhati started and what Radhika said. And I want to sort of tell you a little about what IBM has done and what we're also doing in terms of mentoring other organizations. So we started operations in India mid 90s, and in year 2000 we had the same-sex health insurance for same-sex partners. We also had implemented the gender affirmation surgery right then. So we were much, way ahead of the legislation in that sense. So now with the reading down of 377, what has happened is, one, we're celebrating it every year to make sure we do these small celebrations and make way for bigger decisions to happen. Two is, now that we have all the right policies, same-sex partner, medical insurance, or gender affirmation, or all our policies are basically inclusive of LGBT plus community. The second thing what we're doing is expanding mindsets, because it's one thing to have the right programs and policies, but the real thing is when a person is in a water cooler conversation and what really happens at that time. Somebody smirks at me, or somebody just laughs, and somebody just looks at me like that. If I use a washroom which people think I'm not supposed to, how about that housekeeping person who looks at me? And that is what we are addressing a lot, especially in the last few years, which is that we train each of our vendor staff. Each of our housekeeping staff gets trained. Even the toilet training happens, that if we have inclusive washrooms, what kind of training needs to be done for our vendor staff so that they see it with an expanded mindset. Second is, we have some 7,000 managers across the country, and we are training them on microaggression, on how do they need to see people who are different from them, and also creating an environment where people are okay to come out. If they're not really coming out, especially senior people, we are really sort of doing everything we can, because if senior people come out, then inclusion fosters in a very fast way. I mean, you need to see role models up there, and that is our third thing, that now at IBM we've done the policies, we're doing these trainings, but now we need people from the LGBT plus community to take on senior roles. And it's not that people are not there, but people need to come out. Some of them are out only to a specific group, but we want them to come out like openly and be role models, and making sure that we use analytics a lot. So what we do is through a lot of self-identification. So if I'm from the community, I can self-identify myself from the LGBT plus community. And therefore we keep a tab on how many senior people we have, what is the kind of attrition we are facing, how many people are getting hired from the community, so how many people are getting promoted from the community. So we make sure that leaders have their skin in the game. So allies have increased by about 30% every year. I mean, this year also, June Pride Month, I was happily sharing with Keshav the other day that 30% increase in allies. It is unheard of, at least LGBT plus inclusion too. So to Arundhati and Radhika's point, absolutely bang on. We are right there. We want to hire more people. We want to make sure people are comfortable coming out. And if they're not, we feel responsible for it as IBM managers. And not only that, we are also mentoring quite a few organizations who've just started the journey.
Thanks so much. And Keshav, if I can hand it to you, your thoughts?
But don't you hear me enough? Why would you want to hear me again? I mean, it's just... But okay, so a couple of points that I picked up. One was that I remember very clearly when Mr. Chinoy started his journey on LGBTQ inclusion. It was actually at the launch of the Keshav Suri Foundation, which was at the hotel. And I must say that it was at the end of and it was in 2018, in October 2018, in fact. After of course, the fabulous judgment. And I remember him saying that this is something that he wants to now take on for life. And I think that since then, he's really, I think, delivered and over-delivered. And I would really like that to be used as an example for other industry bodies, and not just industry bodies, but for other people in the corporate world, as well as in apex bodies, to be able to push policy change. You don't really have to be an out and proud gay person or a lesbian person to be queer. I think that's what I love about our community. And I personally like the word queer in a way, because it sort of includes everybody. At the end of the day, now we already have the alphabet soup, which is LGBTQIA+. We're going to do A to Z very soon. And I would, love to say that I'm not going to speak on his behalf, but, if Mr. Chinoy says he's openly queer, that would be amazing. And we can reclaim him as that. I do think that we need to be very sensitive of the fact that right now, because of the situation that the world is going through, livelihood building is going to be very, very important. And especially for a community like ours that has been sort of subjected to various forms of discrimination, and within our community has various forms of sub-minorities, and therefore there are some more vulnerable than others. And right now in this current pandemic situation, again, citing the example of the representations we did via FICCI and via KSF, was so that we could make sure that those voices that we felt were way more vulnerable were spoken about, talked about, and kept in the minds of everybody. Now that FICCI is talking very openly about livelihood building for the greater 50 cause, which is for inclusion of women, especially in the rural areas of India, I think that it's good to share that we're also making sure that trans women are included in that conversation, and making sure that that sort of same effort that is being made for livelihood building for women, it also goes to trans women, and then vice versa to the various other minorities of the LGBTQIA+ community. I have to say that in terms of intersectionality, it's very important for, again, we take it for granted in some ways or the other, but at least in our diversity and inclusion task force, we have a subgroup on gender, we have a subgroup on LGBTQ, and as well as empowering people with disabilities. And again, when we talk about livelihood building, these are the communities that need to be making sure that they're a part of those conversations. And I think that's personally what I would like to see.
Thanks. Everyone, please use the chat box. I want to answer one question that came up earlier in terms of, what works and what hasn't worked. And actually, but even before that, for everyone who's watching and thinking about, what do I take home from this? I have like 3 things that I want to tell you. First is, if you are at an organization and you want to bring about change, please don't reinvent the wheel. Many of us have done this already and we are already doing it. So just copy paste. There's no copyright in like an anti-discrimination clause or this or that. We can share ours with everyone else, right? So don't say, how do I change? What wordings do I have? Just call any of us, we'll give you our wordings. We also didn't write our own. Even when Godrej wrote us, I called a friend and we got his wordings. And I'm sure there's one company in the start that made some wordings and everyone else has just copy pasted that once. So, don't reinvent the wheel for anything. There's a network out there. There is infrastructure which has been created, right? You want to hire queer people. There are so many agencies. You want to do training. There are 5 agencies that will help you do training, right? FICCI itself has an incredible course that FICCI is offering on diversity and inclusion. Yeah. Do you want to go on mute? Yeah. Great. So FICCI itself has an incredible course that they are offering. And maybe Uma Bablin, you can tell us about this course that you are offering later. My point is, use this entire infrastructure because it's out there. It's been created for you. Yeah. Number 2 is proof of pudding isn't eating. So all the talking you do is going to make no use if you don't hire, right? We just heard that from Prachi as well. Dalit has hired 100 LGBTQ people in the past 2 years. So if you're doing all this talking and, you're doing a rainbow Instagram filter on your account and you think you're so cool, but you have like 0 queer people working with you, what's the point? So you need to, in everything you do, you need to go and actively hire, because when you hire a queer person, you're helping an entire ecosystem, right? You're giving that person a job, you're giving that person confidence, that person goes back home and helps the family. And if it is a trans person, if it's someone who is marginalized, I mean, you're really saving people's lives when you hire us. So act in terms of active hiring, not just talking. Yeah. So when you go home, I want you to do these 2 things. And I want to ask everyone, what is not working in these times? I'll tell you my idea of what is not working. One bit is this, and the second bit is linked to something Radhika said earlier. I'm seeing a lot of talking, and then in lots of meetings, I'm seeing someone saying, let me play devil's advocate for a minute, and trashing what one is suggesting. So I'm seeing a lot of like just meeting after meeting in multiple organizations, and this needle of inclusion moving so slowly. So that's really not working, I think, for me and for in so many other companies. What seems to be working is more and more senior leadership is getting behind this. But I'm seeing this gap between intent and action. And I want to ask everyone else also, Arundhati, Radhika, Keshav, Prachi, what's not working for you at this moment? Yeah, Radhika, you want to go first?
Yeah, I'll answer that question, and then I'm going to ask Arundhati a question. So I think what's not working for me is the pace. I mean, we've talked about this, Parmesh, and I think this COVID has really added a complexity, because hiring is slow. It's genuinely slow. Unfortunately, there seems to be more firing than hiring. So I think the COVID has given an extra challenge of how to make change when we just the tools to make the change have become harder. So I don't really have an answer for that, other than let's focus in on the change in attitudes until we see hiring resume. My question for Arundhati is, can you please update us as to after 377 on the legal side, what are likely to be the next challenges? We are really appreciative of your time on this panel. And those of us in the corporate India like Keshav, myself, Prachi, we will keep doing the work with the corporations, especially with FICCI. What do you see as the next few legal challenges? On what grounds? Is it insurance? Is it adoption? Is it marriage? What is it?
Yeah, thanks, Radhika. I actually think it's all of those things. And it's as Keshav said, it's also different things for different groups within the LGBT community, which we know is diverse in and of itself. So, if I look at the kind of questions that I get as a lawyer, some of it is, a lot of it is health at this time, right? And how do I protect myself and my partner? I think as you said, adoption, health insurance, employment discrimination, housing discrimination. If I look at it in 2 big buckets, there's the government and there's the private sector. Right. So when it comes to the government, we have a strong anti-discrimination law in place. It's the Constitution. And it's really for queer people to come forward and ask for it to be enforced for them, which they are doing. Okay. And I think that's something that we're going to see increasing. When it comes to the private sector, I think there are, there are 2 kinds of change. One is a kind of top-down approach where management is able to bring about new policies. And then the other is really people knowing that they are in a safe and inclusive environment where they can speak up and ask for the kind of change that they need, right? So when I look at the kind of legal landscape, right? These are the broad parameters of the legal landscape. I see change that we need in the private sector and in the public sector. And then we need it across a host of rights.
But biggest... do we see one big action happening that the whole community can get behind again? The way the community got behind 377, like, is that in the cards in the next 1, 2, 3 years or not? You can't say yet.
I guess it's a question for this group. I think it's also that COVID has required us to kind of go back and rethink our priorities and not just, how do we come together in coalitions? Like one of the big questions is, how do you actually form groups? How do you communicate? How do you take up issues at different points in time? But what I do think is that, when I think of strategy, right, as a lawyer, and I'm not speaking as someone who works within a corporate organization, but when I think of strategy as a lawyer, you can do two kinds of things. So you can have a kind of all my eggs are in one basket. The big legal challenge is 377, and then you have to win 377, right? Which is why 2013 was such. It wasn't just a devastating loss personally for people, but it was also because that was the one big major challenge. But also now, if you have the possibility of different kinds of civil rights, right? Because once that hurdle of a criminal law is gone, suddenly all these civil rights are up for grabs. And so I think at this time, I think a multi-pronged approach, which looks at different civil rights, which looks to target different sectors, where basically also people are, as Parmesh said, go back to your own organization and your own institution and see what change is needed there, and make that change happen there. So that's how I would answer the question.
Keshav, Prachi.
Okay, I'll go. I think two things clearly come out, especially in the COVID times. One is the mental health is sort of ignored. So much anxiety, stress, and fear which has surfaced actually in all of us, in every human being for that matter. But when it comes to a marginalized community, if you allow me to use the word, whether it's women, LGBT plus people, or people with disabilities, it is definitely seen so much more. I've had people calling me as well and it was shocking that they are not in the best domestic conditions, and office was actually a safe space to work in, to be in, and suddenly they are home not in the best of conditions. So we've of course addressed it in various ways: coach on call, having a mentor, talking to them regularly, having mindfulness sessions. But this clearly is, if it's happening here, it's happening in other organizations also. And second is that because a lot of companies are moving into trying to be LGBT plus inclusive, which is absolutely great, but very soon we'll have to, or probably it's the right time to be aware that one thing is to have policies, another thing it's real implementation. And really, I'm repeating myself that unless you have people in decision-making roles from the community, it's just good to have. Because at the end of the day, what matters is if people are creating innovative, creative solutions for your client, and that happens when people are in meaningful positions. And then everybody will start seeing the value. It's like we don't have to keep speaking that, oh my God, please hire people from the LGBT plus community, or please hire women in senior positions, or please hire people with disabilities. It'll happen because people will see the benefit. People will see that they're real beneficiaries of it. So that has taken a back seat, clearly, these two things.
Keshav, I wonder if you can tell us about the benefits, because you've hired 100 people over the past 2 years. And I know that, it's really I know personally because I only stay at the Lalit whenever I can, exactly because of this. But tell us about the benefits that you've actually had in hiring, more and more queer people.
So I actually have a lot of my team members on this call, and I can see Kiara is there as well, who I think, and she's got her video off. So honestly, she's the best to answer this question, because clearly my benefits lie in having a fabulous person like Kiara coming to work, being comfortable enough to come to work as herself, who transitioned and just has been a part of our family, and even during the pandemic has moved into our hotel in Bangalore, and just basically now it's her hotel more than it's mine. So I think the true benefits is that I have a happy team, and I have a team that has, as we know, the hospitality industry, travel, tourism industry has, just like how there are people who have been disproportionately affected because of the pandemic, there are industries that have been very badly affected, some more than the others. And the hospitality, aviation, industry is going to take a long time for it to recover. But the fact that I actually have a team that is so supportive and that is still there, ready to support the company, ready to be with the company, irrespective of the revenue situation, and not complain about the fact that there might be salary cuts or there might be certain things. That in itself is my proof and my putting that the company can survive because I have a team that truly is happy to work there, is happy to be themselves there, and is happy to follow me to the ends of the world. And right now we really seem like as if we are at the end of the world. And I like, just like how we as a company has stood by our team, it's now the team who's standing by us. And I think that is a big thing. What I personally feel is that and this is sort of for taking a summary of what everyone is saying, I think queer people are everywhere. And I would really like to now stop, and I've been guilty of it myself. And though Radhika, myself, and Zainab and our task force are very proud to be the first openly queer members of a task force, but the fact that we're the first openly queer, right? I want that to stop now. I want it to be like, it's a given, right? Not the first queer woman or the first queer man or for the first trans person. I want it to now just be so natural and so ingrained in us that I think that, the conversation then doesn't become about equity versus equality. I mean, it becomes of how they come and merge together. So that's pretty much.
Thanks, Keshav. Thanks. I like Sabisa's question about how do we make stronger allies, and I'm wondering if any, I know we have about 7-8 minutes, but do either of you want to actually give maybe one tip on how you can be a better ally? Radhika, maybe starting with you.
Sure. Just my approach has been to always just keep talking about it very naturally in conversation. So I will introduce my wife in conversations, even randomly. Talking to a doctor, dentist, driver, travel operator. If you're booking a ticket, whatever. My wife this, my wife that, and they look really confused. And then I explain quickly and I move on. And then the more I relax people in that conversation, the more relaxed I find that they are. So I would recommend to just keep talking about it as naturally as possible. And then all the media has helped also, right? So then people are like, oh, okay, I've heard about this, but now I see somebody human actually.
Arundhati, one tip on how to create better allies? Yeah.
Yeah, I think, it's about putting your stories out there, kind of like what Radhika said. I mean, I know that when we were in court, part of the process of education and part of the reason why it was so important to have petitioners like Keshav at that time was that, the judges had said in the 2013 case in Nas Foundation that they didn't know any gay people. So I think really it is about kind of, saying, hopefully in India one day, my wife or my partner, or, just really making sure that visibility is there. And we're here, we're Indian, we're part of the social fabric, and we're part of, the legal bar, the legal community, companies, government servants, and it's important for that to be recognized.
Thanks. Prachi?
In a similar way, what we do is anybody who's becoming a people manager can only become a real can actually only become a people manager when he or she goes through, or that person goes through a mandatory training for D&I, which includes LGBT plus inclusion. So clearly a lot of stories are discussed at that time. So you cannot become a leader in IBM unless you go through that, unless you have the understanding of all diversity constituents. And then making sure that we use AI to see analytics on what is happening. Do leaders actually present data to us? How many people getting hired? How many getting promoted? How many are attriting, and what are the reasons, why are they attriting in that particular team. And we also do several things like inclusion awards. So people from the community actually choose which manager has been really inclusive, and that person gets awarded and showcased as a role model, and you know, so similar things in a different way, which work well in a corporate world.
Yeah, Arundhati, yeah.
So I think, I mean, the way I see it, there are two parts of this, right? One is what can you do within your own organization, but also if you are the client, right? So, I mean, for me as a lawyer, we are the service provider and we are dealing with clients. And I know that for many legal organizations, for instance, the composition of the team also depends on what the client demands. Right. So if you as a corporation are in the position of a client, please ask of your service providers who is on my team. I think a lot of times the way we think about this is that queer people or women are not in positions of authority. But the fact is that often we are, and we are in hiring positions also, not just within our own organizations, but also when we hire outwards as service providers. So, for instance, the moment a client wants to see XYZ composition of a team, magically that team will appear. So please ask that question when you are on the client side, when you have a service provider, please ask them who is on the team which is servicing us, because I think that also is a market-driven way of ensuring more diversity on the other side, not just within your organization.
That's excellent, Arundhati. That's excellent. Keshav, you also have straight people working with you, and this was my question. And I just wanted to ask you, because how did you get how did you get all your straight employees to become such good allies? Like, what did you do in terms of convincing them that this journey you were on was worth their while?
So what we did was everyone took an equality pledge, which basically said that they are not going to discriminate on the basis of sexual orientation, gender, caste, religion. And I think that was the first step of putting the word sexual orientation in a sort of HR format. And that's when there was not a single issue, not a single person questioning it. And then I think a lot changed, Parmesh, when we started having those LGBTQ nights at Kirisu, when we started having a lot of representation in the hotel, not just in the form of team members, but also in the form of guests, also in the form of, the supply chain management, as Arundhati was talking about. When we suddenly, there's one thing to have policies, but then there's also another to actually have guests that are out and proud and that are comfortable enough or feel that it's a safe space. And we did that. And I remember the LGBTQ couples that you've sent to our hotel so many times, and one of them turned around and said, "This is the first time I'm actually saying that this is my daughter or my child, because usually I say this is, I'm with my aunt, or it's the aunt's child or whatever. This is the first time it was a queer couple that was openly proud to have a child." And of course, I know that I've just fell into my own trap of saying first time. But I think that is what sort of brought my team to not, to be such happy allies and to proudly call themselves queer. I think it was these, having representation and stories and actual physical contact. And I understand that right now, that's what's scary, is that all these safe spaces that we've built are all under threat because of, the fact that we have to be very careful, and especially in socially distance.
Thanks. I'm gonna, Uma, Bavleen, it's exactly 6 p.m. So do you want to wrap up? But before that, if I can request you to just share with everyone what FICCI is doing. Tell us about the diversity course. Tell us about all the great things that you've planned. Yeah.
Sure.
So back to you.
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much. This has been such a wonderful webinar and the book reading. And thank you so much, Parmesh, for acknowledging FICCI as an ally in your book. And of course, acknowledging our Secretary General. Thank you, Keshavji, also for that. Yes, so we at FICCI, frankly, and I think I can definitely speak on behalf of me and Bavleen, definitely. It's been a great learning for us. And frankly, I think we are very early in our journey, and very humbly to put, we are learning from all of you wonderful task force members who have very openly, joined the task force and are speaking and teaching us in terms of how to take the dialogue forward. And very important, definitely, is to have as many conversations as possible, which is why, and with the one, I don't know if I should say a positive thing, but with the COVID pandemic, what is happening is we are able to virtually connect with everybody very quickly and have more conversations on the topic, so which is definitely a plus. And under the task force, of course, what we've done is, yes, we are having conversations through our webinars. The other thing that we felt very rightfully, like how Prachi said or Arundhati and others said about hiring, it's also very important to have capacity building. So global MNCs, frankly speaking, fantastic because they have global policies. It does help a bit because there are policies in way, but there are a lot of Indian companies who want to be inclusive but who don't know how. So the task force is a very good place to reach out to, and our task force members are more than forthcoming to help out. And so that's how the training program or the capacity building program that we have launched, and it's ongoing. We just started on 5th of September, and on the eve of Article 377 actually. And this coming Saturday is the next session. It's 9 modules, and we plan to continue to do more such capacity building programs, doing more deep dives on each of our subgroups to sort of help people become more inclusive and start having these conversations within their organization. So that's where we are. And like Keshavji said, a lot of representations, like Arundhati is saying, insurance is a very big piece. So more such issues that keep coming our way, we are more than happy to push the government or wherever regulatory bodies that we need to push, make representations as an industry body and champion the cause. So we are there exactly for that. And I think we are just happy to play a small bit in the whole large conversation. And please do reach out to us, everybody who's on the call, for any help that you require, and we are happy to help, so to speak. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Keshav, are you doing the closing? Because you did the beginning, or is it Radhika?
I think Radhika or Arundhati or Prachi, I think everyone should say a line or two, maybe even go through some of the questions from the chat, and if there's anything that speaks to one of you.
Keshavji, just one more point, sorry, about the book that I wanted to make at the beginning, I forgot, is actually toward the end, everybody, there is a very good list of resources that Parmesh has put together for us. So, it's really helpful. So those of you who want to see where to go and what to do, there's a good list out there also. So please do make use of that. Yeah, thanks.
In final line, you wanted a dialogue? No, Radhika, go first. Yeah.
No, Parmesh will end with the dialogue. I will just thank everybody who has attended this session today. Thank you sincerely for making the time. Whatever your motivation was, I hope you got something out of it. Do read the book. The list of resources at the end is complete. Also, FICCI, the task force, all of us have some experience in this. So if you, again, want to take some action, please do reach out to Uma or Bavleen in the task force. And they will just connect you to the right people who can help in your company. Thank you so much.
Arundhati, would you like to see? Yeah.
No, this was great. Thank you so much. And thank you all for sharing, all your learning and experience about including diversity and inclusion in corporate India. Thank you.
And thanks a lot from my side as well. It was absolutely fantastic to be learning so much from the experts here and to be sharing the space with all of you. I'll say that if you are from the corporate world, start conversations now. Make it real for your company and make sure that you look at numbers, how many people are out, and really see progress of what you're doing. And if you are an individual, an ally, or from the community, I'd say be an upstander. Don't just listen to something which is not okay and just pass by. Just stop, and as Parmesh just said, that lovingly you can tell people, because nobody is really ill intentioned, but you most of the people you'll see are with good intentions, but they are mostly unaware. So just help them be more aware, and help them see what they haven't seen till now, and they'll be happy to.
And I would just like to end with saying, buy the book immediately. Everybody on this call and who's also not on this call and will watch this video, I think just buy this book. It's very, very important. It's such an important book, especially at this time. Not just because we're all in it. Also, yes, that also is one of the thing. If you're, like that sort of thing, then we are in it. But other than that, I think it's just so educational and just important to have this chronicle at this particular point. And I think I just end with saying that, yes, I really am seeing the chat comments. I understand that there has been people are scared sometimes to how to approach the community and whether they're saying the right thing or the wrong thing. I think I agree with Parmesh. A lot of it has to do with intent. And I also agree with Arundhati that just ask. Don't be afraid to ask. And I'm sure we'll be very happy to, give you the answers. So with that said, thank you everyone.
Can I say one last thing, Keshav? Can I say one last thing?
It's your show. I don't even know why I'm doing the wrap up.
You're so used to it at Kitty Sue. Meow. Someone end this pandemic and bring Kitty Sue back so Keshav can have like a live audience.
Yeah.
Okay.
Tell me about it. Rap career is failing.
What I want to say to everyone is really, this is the moment, right? There are very few times in history where we have a chance to make a fundamental difference. This is it. We had 70 years, more than 70 years it took for us to take 377 out. This is a moment now where we can actually do it all. And I'm going back to what Arundhati said, multi-pronged approach, right? Legally, it can be multi-pronged. So in terms of society, it can be multi-pronged. In terms of a workplace, it can be multi-pronged. But the only way we're going to get there is if each one of us actually stands up and speaks up and shows up. Because if you don't at this moment, we're going to lose a very vital time, right? So it's an inflection point. I just hope that everyone on this webinar, everyone who sees it recognizes that they also have to come forward and act in whichever way they can, wherever they can, to create a more inclusive world. And I hope that whoever is watching joins us in this. Yeah. So thanks very much. And it's lots and lots of love.
Thank you, Radhika. Thank you, Arundhati, for your time. Thank you, Prachi. And thank you, of course, Umaji and Bavleen. And Parmesh, thank you. Thank you for getting us all together.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone, for joining. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Thank you.
Video online,